I'm a 27-year-old woman, and I recently moved into a nice apartment in a safe neighborhood with my 2 dogs, Charles and Wigwam. Charles is a Corgi German Shepherd mix and is the most loving but obnoxious dog. Wigwam is a Lhasa Apso who's quiet, sweet, and scared shitless of his own shadow. Each floor in the building has 4 apartments and a fire escape door that only opens from the inside. My unit's on the back of the building, so my patio is about 10 feet from the fire escape stairs. I take my dogs out 3 times a day, with the absolute latest trip at midnight if I'm by myself. Every time I leave, I make sure to put the bar lock on my patio door and lock my front door. Every time, without fail. About a week ago, we had a snowstorm, so I cracked my patio door since I love the cold weather and, well, I'm a goddamn adult and I wanted to watch the snow fall. It was around 11 p.m. when I decided to take the dogs out for the night before it got too late. I was about to lock the patio door, but decided against it since both dogs hate the snow, and I knew it would be a quick trip. Plus, I lived on the 5th floor, and it was probably overkill to be bolting my patio door shut every time I left anyway. Or so I thought. After returning to the apartment from our visit to the designated pet area outside, my dogs immediately ran over to the patio door. I noticed that the door was shut and the bar was locked, which I thought was strange after vaguely remembering leaving it open, but didn't think much of it. I went to the kitchen to grab some dog treats, but could hear both dogs going crazy and growling at the large cedar chest in my living room. As I walked in to see what the commotion was about, I saw a pair of eyes creeping from under the chest lid. I stood there for a few seconds in shock before the reality of the situation set in. Calmly walking back towards my front door, I urged my dogs to follow me outside. As soon as I shut the door, we ran to the car, jumped in, locked the doors, and called the police. Within 5 minutes, the police showed up at my apartment and eventually came back out, dragging a middle-aged man out of the building in handcuffs. Apparently, this guy had been watching me since I moved in and had been staking out my place waiting for an opportunity to sneak inside since he knew I lived alone. As if that wasn't creepy enough, the police found him with a pocket knife, needles, ketamine, and a picture of me from the day I moved in shoved into his fanny pack. Needless to say, I couldn't sleep for days. It's only been about a month since this happened, but I doubt I'll be able to make it to the end of my year-long lease. This incident happened in the summer of 2015. I was at work that day on a smoke break when I saw a dog get thrown from a moving vehicle in 4-lane city traffic during the start of rush hour. I ran right into the road, scooped his little ass up, and booked it back to work. Amazingly enough, he wasn't injured. I'm a huge animal lover, so I just had to take him home until I figured out a long-term plan. I've always lived with a lot of cats, so this was my first experience having a dog that I was solely responsible for. This little guy was very shy, head hung, tail tucked, jumping at every noise. He kept looking at me like I was about to beat him. I was completely clueless about how to care for a dog, except that I knew they had to be taken outside frequently. His first night in my house, we went out about 15 times. I was having my final cigarette of the day and browsing Reddit on the porch around 10:30, with the dog on a leash hanging out under my chair. I saw a man walking down the sidewalk by my house. He kept glancing up at me as he approached. Shortly after he passed by, he stopped, turned on his heel, and walked up to my porch. "Hey, can you tell me where 302 Church Street is?" he asked. I told him I could search for it on my phone. As I was waiting for my GPS to load, he kept taking steps closer as he explained how he was trying to find his friend's house. Finally, the address came up on my map. "It's exactly 2 blocks north of here, right on the southwest corner of the cross street," I told him, pointing in that direction. He kept his eyes locked on me, continuously moving closer. The dog started growling very softly. I had forgotten he was even there until now. "Mind if I take a look at the map?" He grinned sheepishly as he stepped closer. "I'm bad with directions." I stood up from my seat, pointing down the street again. "Really, it's just 2 blocks up the road. Just follow the road, 2 blocks. The house will be on your left." I tried to make it as clear as possible that there was no way I was about to let this guy touch my phone. "Well, can I call them? I need to let them know I'm coming," he said, still creeping closer, extending his hand. "No," I replied curtly. "How about I just text then?" he asked, walking forward still. "Dude, no." I started towards my door. Just let me see your phone." He was getting visibly pissed off, but trying to contain it, and was getting way too close to my house. As a last-ditch effort to get the dude to fuck off, I said, "You need to get the fuck out of my yard. My dog is protective, and he will fuck you up." I didn't even know the first thing about this dog, let alone whether or not he had the capacity to fuck someone up. I just hoped saying so would intimidate the guy, as if I had the magic words to spring the pupper into action. Suddenly, he emerges like a fucking bullet from under the chair, growling, snarling, barking his little ass off. He pulled the lead hard enough to jerk my chair damn near off the porch trying to get at this guy. He sounded like an 80-pound attack dog instead of the 40-pound timid beagle mix he was. I was afraid. I didn't know this dog. I had no idea if he would turn on me. I knew absolutely jack shit about dogs at the time. He backed his hindquarters into my legs, locking his eyes on the guy and baring his teeth. The man held up his hands and backed off, stammering something about the directions I had given him earlier. When he began walking away, I went inside and turned off the lights, peeking out the window at him. He glanced at my house to assure I was inside, and then turned to walk in the complete opposite direction I had pointed him in. Icing on the cake, he pulled out a phone from his pocket and raised it to his ear to make a call. That dog secured his place as a member of my family that night. He is incredibly protective of me and has frightened away another creep since this incident. We're completely attached, and he always lets me know that he's grateful to be in a safe, loving home. His name's Frank, and I truly believe that if it weren't for him, that night would have ended very poorly for me. This happened about 5 years ago, about a year after my fiance and I started living in our house. The house has a split-level floor plan, so when you walk in the front door, there's 2 half staircases, one going up into the living room and another going down into the basement. The only access to our backyard is through the sliding glass door in the upstairs living room. I've always been naturally muscular, and people tell me all the time that I have an intimidating demeanor. I'm 6 feet tall and 225 pounds, whereas my fiance is only 5'2" and weighs maybe 130 pounds. Tiny little thing. During this time, I partied a lot. Way more than I should have. I was between jobs and it was towards the end of the holidays, so my job search wasn't quite as active as it should have been. Most nights that I was out partying, I would just end up crashing with friends, which meant my fiance spent many nights alone with our 3 dogs. If I'm to be honest with myself, I had a serious problem with substance abuse, and I was letting it get the better of me. Fast forward a couple months and I had just found a new job that did random drug and alcohol testing, which was a godsend in hindsight. I was sober for 2 days and had begun repairing my relationship with my fiance when she told me how glad she was that I was sleeping at home again. I thought nothing of it, as I imagined she just must have been missing me. I kissed her on the head and told her I was glad to be home too, and that I loved her. Later that night, we were watching TV downstairs when I thought I heard something moving in the backyard. The dogs must have heard it too, since they perked up their ears, but I dismissed it as they didn't seem too alarmed. A moment later, I heard the noise again, and my fiance quickly muted the TV and shot me a nervous look. "Did you hear that?" she asked, looking very uncomfortable. I tried to reassure her that it was probably just the neighborhood cats playing in the bushes, but she shook her head and insisted that wasn't the case. Before I could ask her what she meant, I heard our sliding glass door upstairs fly open. I was on my feet in an instant. The dogs let out the most ferocious sounding barks I have ever heard and tore ass up the stairs, with me right behind them. As we rounded the first set of stairs, I could see the glass door slam close and the silhouette of a man running away. As soon as we reached the door, I flung it open and the dogs shoved past me to chase after the would-be intruder. I grabbed my mag light and ran out into the backyard. On my way down the deck stairs, I saw the dogs freaking out at the fence, so I sprinted over and jumped it just in time to see the man attempting to climb over the fence into the neighbor's yard. He was covered head to toe in black clothing, a thick black sweatshirt with the hood pulled tight to conceal his face, and jet black cargo pants. Without any regard for my own personal safety, I charged towards the man and just barely missed grabbing him as he made his way over the fence. Once more, I followed him over and came around the front of my neighbor's house just in time to see him hop into an old beat-up pickup and speed off. I only stayed for a moment to watch him tear out of the neighborhood before running back home to check out my fiancée. When I walked into the house, she was sitting upstairs in the living room, surrounded by all 3 dogs and clutching the biggest knife we own. She was visibly shaken, but I know she's a strong woman. She told me she was ready in case I got into trouble. After calling the cops and giving statements, we checked to make sure every door and window in the house was locked up tight. We decided to try and watch another movie, as neither of us were tired enough after the adrenaline rush we had just been through. During the movie, I asked her what made her so sure that it wasn't just cats playing in the yard. What she told me was enough for me to decide to change my whole life. She said that for about a month now, she had been hearing strange noises coming from all around the house late at night. She would hear footsteps outside and occasionally swore she could hear whispering. I asked her why she never told anyone, and she just shook her head and said she wasn't sure. Whoever this man was, he must have known that I was never home at night and that my fiancé was all alone. Fortunately for us, he must have missed the fact that we have 3 Great Danes, and for whatever reason, on that night had decided to not make sure she was alone again. Since that day, I've been completely sober, 5 years total as of March, and have not left my fiancé alone overnight once. Our relationship has never been stronger, and our 3 Great Danes are the best dogs anyone could ask for.